Okay, welcome back. Look at us. We organized ourselves this time.
All in black, and we actually are all on one screen.
Yeah. But how come I'm
There's
the
a,
only one that wore a Spunlogic shirt?
you didn't get the memo?
User friendly. No.
I don't have I don't have any left. I don't have any left. I wore them in the
Uh,
ground. I liked them so much. I wore them in the ground.
yeah, well, the laundry day didn't line up correctly for that one.
Well, next time. Next time. I do like your 44 shirt. All right, guys. Let's get into the meat of this thing. So we had some questions from last time that I wanted us to get into as we think about the past, and the first is really, what's the one thing, if you had to pick one thing that you think we would do differently if we were able to go back in time and start the company?
I'll maybe start. I think, we probably didn't bring advisors in early enough, right? We brought in advisors, gosh, 2003, 2004, like probably a good 4 or 5 years after we'd started, right? And getting, the advisory board together was like a big shift for us. It allowed us to bounce ideas and everything else, but we probably didn't know to do that early on. And I remember, Jeff, you were making big asks of some really prominent folks in Atlanta, and we were shocked that they'd even consider spending 5 minutes with us, yet alone, join our board and so forth.
Well, we started that with Bill Nussey and Ken Bernhardt, and then I think everybody else was a yes because those two guys were in, which was pretty cool. I actually wrote about, I don't know if you guys remember when we first met Ken Bernhardt, but it was when we were working on Brand Atlanta, and he was on the committee, and we were building the website for Brand Atlanta. But I actually used that story in my book, where the mentor in the book meets the protagonist in exactly the same setting. So I definitely pulled that out. What about you, Danny?
One thing we could do differently. I was thinking about that. I think one of the things that we burned a lot of time and money on was how we cut our teeth on learning to run projects when we were first getting off. I mean, you think about the number of projects that we ran that we were way over budget on and we lost money on. And, I would think that an early stage agency, if they're doing a lot of custom development work, which we did, not all agencies do that, but if they are, I think going out and hiring somebody with some real experience when it comes to managing those types of projects, managing scope, because scope creep is a nightmare. And just, anybody that has experience running those kind of projects and keeping them on time, on budget, I think that could be invaluable. The right kind of dev manager or technical project manager, something along those lines, or even the right CTO, depending on the level you're hiring for. I think that could help a ton. We would have benefited from that, honestly.
Yeah, I think about some of those early big development projects that just went sideways immediately. It was like we would start and then things went off the rails and stayed that way until we got the project done.
Yeah, and over the years, just we've learned so much about it was never about the skill of the developers or the technology people. It was really about how do you manage the client? How do you manage the process? How do you control scope? How do you negotiate things? I mean, there's so much of it was related to sort of project account and those kind of management and those kinds of skills. So it's hard, it was easy to take those for granted at the time, but I think we learned how important those were over time.
Yeah, I would say, definitely agree with Rod and Danny on those. The other thing I would say is I wouldn't spend too much on this at the beginning, but spending just enough at the beginning on a lawyer and an accountant just to get stuff straight. And you don't need to have them on retainer. You don't need to keep spending money on them, but to get some key things straight. And set up your books on the accounting side a lot. Everybody makes some mistake there, and it should be a lot easier to start a business. You should be able to basically go to the Secretary of State website and hit a button and pay one fee and get everything templated correctly. But no state makes it that easy, and you end up paying a lawyer. But if it's $5,000, $10,000, it's worth it to get some stuff cleared up at the beginning.
What's interesting about that is that nowadays, I think, you have a lot of that accessible, right? I think when we started out, like if you search for an SOW or MSA, not to even mention that we didn't know what that meant, but besides that, if you do now, you can actually get good templates. Mm-hmm. So folks who are, in that position nowadays, they have a wealth of information. I remember, relatively,
well,
right?
Well, on that stuff,
what's interesting about
Raj,
that?
I was referring more to like the corporate formation stuff and the accounting stuff. But yeah, also for that, get a SOW MSA thing. But you can basically find a friend in the industry and copy theirs.
Danny, you're going to say
true. But I think actually, I was going to say, I think even that wealth of information almost creates the opposite problem, and the reason why you still need advice, because now you've got 15 different ways to handle things from 15 different blogs, and it's hard to understand maybe which one is the one that you should be doing. So it's hard even with all the wealth of information. If you go grab a contract template, for instance, it's hard to know sometimes which part of that contract template should you keep and fight for when you're negotiating with a client versus let go, as an example. So I think those lawyers and accountants are obviously really, they can help a lot more than you think early on, even though they feel expensive, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So as you guys think about, as we built our business, the first 5 or 6 years were chaotic, and I would say not very successful. The second 5 years were also chaotic, but we had a lot of success. And so essentially, once we hit year 6, we doubled for the next 4 or 5 years until we sold the business. As you look back, what do you think the turning point was? Because I think we all know really good agencies in town run by really great leaders, but they're sort of, they get stuck 10, 15, 20 people. And to take that leap, we ended up around 75 when we sold. What do you think it was that allowed us to do that?
I'll get going first, I guess. I think it was basically a combination of things, but it was also probably the stability of a couple of very big key clients, right? Cox Enterprises, Balls, and even if I'm thinking back, even GDCD, right? The state of Georgia, right? Mm-hmm. Those were like big, stable accounts, which kind of created a nice foundation for us to go take risks elsewhere. We started going into pitches and maybe being a bit more bold because we had the freedom of that base foundation. Very, very hard to create a base foundation. I don't think we planned out to create the base foundation, but those accounts really kind of created that groundwork for us to just kind of propel out.
Yeah. So like bigger, more stable, even retainer based, some of those that allowed us to build on top of. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things actually. Balzer was 3 years or more before GDCD and Cox. And the other part is if you have a owner like really deeply tied with those foundation accounts, I mean, in this case, Danny developed a really deep relationship, with Balzer early on. He was integral. It became really, you build a base off of that. And you're suddenly talking, when you're a small agency, you're talking to the assistant to the traveling secretary of the marketing department, pretty far down the chain, and you get your small little contract and nobody really knows you did the work, and, you get paid, but little by little you start going up that chain. But for Balzer, the owners of the company knew that we were their vendor. And for GDEC and, to a certain extent with Cox, we at least were at the VP level, as far as the relationship. And that's when you have stability. A lot of times you think you're doing a really good job and somebody new comes in from another place and brings their agency in. And that wasn't going to happen in those clients.
Danny, what do you think?
I think not only do those accounts give us financial stability, it allows us to take risks, Raj, like you were saying, but also it allows us to be more successful, I think, at those risks, because we were able to sort of leapfrog that ladder that you climb when you're trying to pitch from a small client to a slightly larger client to a slightly larger one. By having those larger clients, some of the work we did was way more complex than a lot of what we started to pitch for when we started to take those bigger risks, right? So we were able to have some really good referenceable work, I think, pretty quickly. And that's a hard piece of advice for somebody to follow, because a lot of that's about what you land and when you land it. But I think we were fortunate enough to land things in that order that allowed us to leapfrog the size of the accounts we were getting and be able to support those pitches. I mean, I think part of it too was we were right out of college when we started this company. So I think 5 years in, we started probably making less mistakes than we first 3 years, 4 years in. So I think a little bit of that was true too. So
I always thought we made less mistakes, but we made bigger mistakes. We had
that's true. I agree. Yeah.
Ability to make bigger.
We could make much bigger mistakes. That's true.
I think to that point, Danny, I think it took us a while to figure out not only how to hire and treat our people. I mean, we built a better culture over time. We brought in great people, and we had really great people from day one. But I think we learned to delegate a little bit better as we went and to give people a chance to lead. And we were pretty trusting. I think we trusted each other to each handle the things we were doing, but we also were pretty trusting with leaders as they developed under us, and it allowed us to look up and start looking at bigger items than micromanaging or getting caught up in the minutia.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at who was on the team in that 5th, 6th, 7th year that we had hired, we had some great people that helped us through that time too, and brought their experience to the table. For sure.
So question for you guys. There's two schools of thought really on agencies in terms of services. One, which is how we did it, was we really did as much as we could for clients. We didn't say we're web or email, or we just said, we'll take it, we'll learn it, we'll build it. And that allowed us to scale. But at the same time, I think actually everything we've been involved in since has been a little more focused. What would the advice you guys would give to an agency starting today? Do you think they should focus on one specific area, or do you think they say, hey, we'll take what we can get and build around anything that we can sell?
I think you are what your last 2 or 3 wins say you are at the beginning. You can say you want to focus on something, but meanwhile, you're winning some email work or a website or some SEO or PPC, and that's the main thing that the last couple people did. So until you establish a track record, you are what your last couple of wins say you are. But you should try filtering through that 1 year in or 2 years in, and really double down on what you do well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all kind of come from our early days where we were like anything and everything, right? And that was maybe a lot to do with just surviving. Right. I don't think we would have said no to anything. So given the choice, I think focusing much more, right? And it depends what you're really trying to achieve. I mean, even back in the Spun days, I think even the last episode we talked about being sought after and so forth, right? Getting really, really good at something is how you get sought after, right? And it allows focus and everything else. So if you have the ability to focus in on something and be known for it and to be extremely good at it, you'll be able to accelerate much faster than just taking on everything and everything. But the reality of the game is that sometimes that's exactly what you have to do. So it's not a, some people just don't have a choice.
Yeah. What I think is interesting about that is, as we grew and started getting larger accounts, part of the way that we were able to get those larger either agency of record accounts or the really large pitches was because you had to have a diversified skill set on your team to be able to do that work. And if you were too hyper-focused, so let's just say you focused on WordPress and front-end design, and that's what your agency does, you would never get the larger accounts. So I think, I agree. I think it's a tough bag. I think it has a lot to do with what Raghu said. It depends on who you're winning. It depends on your team and what their skills are and what they're good at. Because if you have a team if you got 4 WordPress developers that got together to start a company, you shouldn't be doing Documentum probably day one, right? So I think it depends on the team you've got. We had a pretty flexible team, pretty novice. So we didn't bring a lot of experience. We didn't all come from the medical community to be able to build a medical technology company. So we were hungry to just do whatever we could. And therefore we had a pretty flexible company. So I think it does have a lot to do with, the team you have, and then also your goal as to what kind of company you want to become. And I don't know that any one answer is going to be the right answer, whether it's to hyper focus or to broaden your skill set, to say the truth.
I do remember, we used to debate, especially even around technology, how much do we want to concentrate our efforts on, say, .NET or Java or Cold Fusion back in the day, right? And then there's a plethora of other things coming through. Like the interesting thing for us back then was that it was a bit of the Wild Wild West on, something was big and then something else and so forth. And so, trying to find talent that could move around, and we're actually pretty successful in finding people who could just learn and get it done. And maybe that was also I think a bit of a reflection because of us. I mean, we also kind of like, even if we didn't know it, we just go off and learn it. And I think that maybe helped in how we hired people that were inquisitive and that learned. So it wasn't, hey, I'm .NET and that's it, or I only do print design and that's it, or whatever it is,
Well, I guess the other thing is if you're a businessman and you want to start a business, then you're so excited about what you're winning and you'll adapt your skill set. If you really enjoy something, app development, or you really enjoy, some other niche, ultimately you're going to be more successful because you get really deep into it. But if you're a business person and you like technology, which was basically the four of us, then whatever technology was interesting, after a while, we found what was cool about it or what was new about it and did it. But if you were more focused and like, hey, I really like this thing, you picked it and you'd get good at it and be passionate about it. And that's part of it. But I think we were passionate about being businessmen. We were passionate about the internet. But as far as that next level of specialization, I don't think that was our passion. We liked the whole thing. It was really exciting.
And I think we talked about this last time, but the thing that I think helped us be successful, even though we were doing lots of different, things from a services perspective, was we had that grounding in user experience, which again, we can debate whether that was super unique or not, but it did give us a singular view into everything that we did. And so when we pitched, maybe it was the first time we were pitching email, but we had an opinion and a take on it. And we could draw from all this user experience we did with other things to prove that we were the best to bring that experience to life. So I think, you can be more broad, but you do need something that pulls it all together.
Yep.
All right. So question, here we are. We're four of us that built a company, sold a company, stayed at the next company for a bit, remained friends over time. Lots and lots of founders have trouble doing that. How did we remain friends throughout all this?
Well, beer probably helped. No, I mean, I think it really came down to a level of trust, and I think each of us had, we all kind of knew, where we were good at, right, and also where we'd struggle or where we were adapting into. Right. And so that kind of allowed each of us to go do our thing. Right. And not worry or micromanage or, kind of look underneath every single, file or anything like that. So I think it was just, it wasn't, I don't know, necessarily planned or anything like that, but we just had a natural ability to like, okay, Jeff's got this, Danny's got this, Ragu's got this, Roger's got this, or someone needs to figure this out. Who's best? Just go figure it out. Not all four of us have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were really good at it. I mean, we were all passionate about the business, so we had plenty of arguments. I don't even remember what most of them were about, but we did a great job of getting passionate, maybe even arguing about things. But then when we made a decision, we really let it go. I mean, I think that was we innately had that. I don't think anybody trained us to do that. And there's a lot of seminars and a lot of training these days that are about how teams are supposed to do that. You're supposed to be passionate, you're supposed to be argument. But then when a decision is made, you got to get behind that and back each other up. And I think we did that naturally for some reason. I think that helped a lot. We forgave each other a lot. I think a lot of the things that kept us friends were some of the stuff that are good in every relationship, right? I mean, we would all say stupid things. We would all hurt each other's feelings. We'd all get mad, but we were all passionate. And we just let it go, and we forgave and we moved on, and we continued to push forward and focus on, the things that were important for the company. So I think that has helped a ton over the years as well.
Well, luckily we each messed something up, so we never could really get that mad at the other three folks.
True.
every now and then, when one of us had a good 6-month run of doing things right, we'd probably start percolating some dissatisfaction until we then messed something up and just sort of said, "Oh well, you know."
And I guess to that point, we all knew we were going to mess up. I mean, we knew we were learning, and it's okay, you know. Where as long as you're trying your best and being honest, that's okay. One tactical thing that we did that at least worked for us, I think, is that we just all said we're going to make the same salary until we sell the thing. And I think that, it's a small thing, but I bet it helped us not have animosity. Why is he making more or something of that nature?
Yeah, I could imagine if you did something like, getting a percentage of what sales I made versus you made versus something. The work that you have to do after the sale is like even more important than the work of getting the sale in the first place. There really is no area where you can't mess up without affecting everybody else, or do better in one area. Well, the rest of the stuff needs to work well also. And at any one point in time, nothing's ever completely equal. Over a period of time, everything's completely equal.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I mean, it's interesting just to think about that nowadays. I mean, I don't know if it was naturally planned, right? It was like, that's we're just going to pay ourselves all the same thing, and that was it. Like, that's actually weird to think back, now, like how in the world did we even come up with that? Obviously, a lot of people do it, but it wasn't like a thought that we had that was going to protect us down the road, and it did, 100%. Sorry, Danny.
Well, I think it reflected our focus on. We were focused on the end game the whole time, and so we didn't waste time quibbling over an extra $1,000 on a paycheck or something like that early on. And there was many times we went out without paychecks to make sure we could make payroll, but nobody ever got grumpy about that or upset. We all just plowed through it and had, I think, a focus on the end game, really. So I think that was reflected in that.
How important do you guys think that was, that we really knew exactly what we were trying to do with the company from early days?
I mean, I think that's epically important. Yeah. I mean, because if all four of us had a different idea in our head, that's where the tension would have arisen pretty quickly. Because, when you have key decisions to make, we'd argue because we'd all be trying to go in different directions based on how that decision was made. I would have thought.
Yeah, and honestly, everybody's value or things are or different. I mean, we all got paid the same amount, but we all got paid very little. So that also kept us focused on the end game, because the end game was going to make not getting paid much at all worth it. And it isn't, I suppose Danny as a dev could have gone and said, "Hey, I want to get a really good dev job, and on the side, I'll see you when I see you, when everything is good." At the end of the day, you need to do everything well, and we paid ourselves as little as possible until we figured out how to do everything well.
Yep.
Jeff, you mentioned something too that I think helped us all, which was we all knew we were going to mess up, and I think Raghu commented a little bit too, but I think not focusing on, blaming each other for the screw ups, and instead focusing on how we recover from them and then learn from them, prevent them in the future. I mean, that's got to be the attitude you have. Otherwise, that's also going to cause animosity between team members if it's mostly a blame game as opposed to just learn and move on. Tactic.
Yeah, it is amazing to me how many people have been taught that if their leader or their boss sees them mess up, then they're going to get in trouble or it's some terrible thing.
Yeah.
It's sad because it's the only way to learn, right? It's the only way to do anything interesting is if you try things and fail and say, all right, as long as we're trying our best in learning, it's great. It's fine.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So as we think about selling the company, one of the things I'm sure you guys have been asked a lot over the years from other agency owners, advice on selling. And there's so many directions to take that, but are there one or two things that you guys would say to anyone asking that question, make sure you have this in order or factor these things in, or, what's going to lead them to have a successful sale of their business?
I think a few things. One, be honest with yourself. Are you selling because you're growing well, you're doing good things, and being part of a bigger company could let you bring that to a wider audience or in a bigger way, or get a complementary skill, because it's not about you, it's about the potential buyer, and your clients. You know, would your clients be better serviced if you were bigger, had more geography, had more services? And just think about it from the perspective of your client and an acquirer. And sometimes you're really happy with what you're doing, but maybe that's really more of a lifestyle business and not a growth business. So you can do things really well and not necessarily be sought after, or you can be sought after but really need some things, and the only way to get them is to be part of something else.
Yeah, I mean, we're good.
So knowing what you're going after, knowing what the real reason you want to sell is key. I agree with that. Yeah, Raj?
Yeah, and I was going to agree with Raghu. I mean, 100%. You know, is it going to better, you know, the agency? Is it going to better your people? Your client's going to get something more out of it, right? So you want to be if you're choosing to sell your company, you want to try and make sure you're positioned to do it from a point of advantage, right? Not from a distressed point. You know, the other thing I'd mention is that, you know the size to sell, right? I really don't think selling too small, you're not going to get the best value. You're not going to get the best out of your folks when you sell too small, right? So well, I think 10 million in revenue, right? About 2 million in EBITDA. That allows for a level of scale to give a good value that you built, and it's a relative scale in the marketplace that buyers, you have more choice in buyers, right? And they're not buying you just from a value standpoint or just for talent. They're buying you for a strategic reason, and you want to find a partner that is looking for a strategic reason. The reason why I give those numbers is that just, you know, and Raghu can probably speak to this better than I can, but, you know, just the cost of trying to go through diligence, right? Not only to your organization, but to their organization, bankers, you know, the whole 9 yards. It is not cost effective, really, to try and do a transaction for a small amount. It almost costs you more than anything else. So then you're giving up a lot of enterprise value.
Yeah, those numbers definitely true as like kind of the way we did our sales. I mean, at actually, you know, selling in kind of a quasi Wall Street way of going about it. I think you could have a smaller transaction where you've merged in with another agency. Yep. You evaluate each other's books because together you want to get some mass. But the next level up would be, you know, going down that route that Raj talked about, you know, evaluating the marketplace, working with an investment bank, working with audits and all the other pieces. It's just stuff costs a lot, and you wouldn't want to do a transaction where so much of the fees ended up going to all these third-party entities. You want the value to come to the buyer, and you want value to come to the seller. And that doesn't happen when there's all these fees if it's at a smaller level. But you can definitely combine in with other firms and merge versus a true acquisition. And, you know, Jeff has some recent experience with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I was going to say to Raj's, you know, to counter Raj's a little bit, it's one thing if you want to sell, transact, and then be done with it. But it's also, to Raghu's point, we've definitely done that with some agencies that want to be part of something together and build something together. Let me ask this question though. So to the idea that when you sell to a company, you really need to factor in, you know, what the new entity is going to bring to bear, what it's going to do for your team members, your clients, so forth. If you were being honest, what percentage of our decision was based on the deal being too good to pass down versus that opportunity afterwards?
For the Spun deal, I mean, I think maybe each of us may have slightly different answers, right? But I you know, there's certainly the financial aspect that was important, so I'm not discounting that. But I do think our frame of mind at that time was that, you know, we can have control of where digital goes, right? But leverage a larger entity, locations, larger clients, things like that, and be able to propel what we could do. So we weren't necessarily, if I'm thinking back to Spun, like we didn't sell it to like just walk away from it, right? We wanted to be part of something next, and we were trying to find obviously the best financial outcome, but also an environment where we still had control and say. So we want just a tiny tuck-in. We knew by then, I think we knew that we were doing we had something special from a digital standpoint, right? And we knew we could bring that value to the next entity and scale it up.
You guys agree with that?
And Jeff, back to your point. Yeah, I think, sorry, I was going to jump back to another one, but on that question, I think a lot of it was about the price we were getting and the multiple we were getting. I mean, that was certainly a driving part of our decision. And then I think a secondary part of the decision was then where do we fit well? And I think we were lucky enough at the end to have basically a choice, I believe, that was two very similar offers. I don't think everybody winds up in that situation. So we were in the catbird seat where we had a couple of offers very similar, and we got to choose, pick our poison, so to speak. So I think that's where we were. I was going to go back, Jeff. You were asking about advice for when you're selling. I had something, and then I wanted you to comment on something. So first, I think it's important to acknowledge when you do start going through due diligence and selling your company, just how draining that is on the leader or leaders of the company. And so if you're somebody who only has one, you don't have any partners and you're by yourself, I think it's extremely important to be able to have a right-hand man or a COO or somebody that can help run the company. But I also think in our case, Jeff, you were our top sales guy still at the time, along with Joe. And so you influenced a lot of what was happening in sales, and to have you dedicated to the deal was potentially dangerous to us. And so we had to take precautions to make sure our pipeline stayed good, and fresh during that time. So I think just being aware going into that everybody else involved in the process doesn't have to worry about running the company. So they're going to sap you dry. You're going to be traveling. You're going to be in tons of meetings. You're going to be focused on being stressed about the deal. So you need to be aware of the fact that you need to keep running the company, because we were also lucky in that the first company we picked with, we closed the deal on, and the numbers aren't great on that happening every time. And so you can go through months of due diligence and have a deal fall apart. And if at the same time you weren't taking care of the shop, not only did your deal fall apart, but now you're way behind on sales, and you got to start the whole process of building back up, maybe 6 months behind. So just something to be aware of as you go into the process.
No, Danny's totally correct. I mean, if you want to do a deal, your best people are probably yourself, or maybe you're not the best person, but at least you pick the best people. And and they're putting 10, 20%, maybe 50% of their time every now and then when it comes to travel and meetings and all of that. And if they spent it on their own firm, that should be better. So you need to really believe that you're doing it for a real reason. And on top of that, honestly, I have a different perspective. I'd say that any quality buyer would pay you roughly within range of what the market is saying that you're worth. I mean, somebody might accidentally be paying more, but they probably don't know the market well if they're accidentally paying more. So maybe you're picking somebody who doesn't know what they're doing for a little bit more money. Or if they're paying less, are they really thinking that you are going to be able to succeed with them as much? Or are they kind of discounting it because they're not really sure if things are going to work out? So I think the monetary range settles itself. If there's a market for you, it'll be roughly in range, give or take. And then you don't need to worry about the last little bit or the last tiny part of the structure. You want to go with somebody that you can achieve your goals with, because you're going to spend several years together. Are you really going to pick the wrong choice and spend several years with somebody that you're not going to achieve your professional goals, or your team is not going to achieve their professional goals with?
One thing I don't know if we, on that first transaction that we did with Spun, we did not, just looking back, we did not do a good enough job really looking at the company, right? In hindsight, I mean, we really, like, now going through it a couple of times, like now really looking through numbers and, what the market advantages are and everything else. We just made the assumption that us joining someone else was going to be a good thing, right? And kind of reflecting back, like I had done way more diligence. We just didn't know any better to do that level of diligence ourselves. We always felt the diligence was the other way around.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So Jeff, before we leave this topic, what I wanted to know from you was, what were some of the most valuable either entities that we brought in to help with the sale that you would recommend that people focus on? And as an example, I remember us after the deal, you saying something like, man, having the right accounting partner really saved us a lot of money on the deal, or the right legal counsel, things like that.
Yeah. I think it's a trifecta. One of the things that Raghu did early in the process was help us find, I guess he was a part-time CFO that helped us.
Rick Lynch.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Who's actually now CFO of MailChimp.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that being a really important part of it. Obviously, having good legal counsel and representation, ideally one that has experience. There were so many things that Kilpatrick Stockton guided us on that we never would have thought to even ask or think about. So that helped. I mean, certainly from the crossing the T's and dotting the I's of the contract, which is like literally thinking a year out from after the deal, what things we need to be making sure are in. So that was huge. But I think, there's debate on whether you try to sell without a firm representing you. We used Ad Media Partners, and what they did was they took us to market. And I would say they were worth every penny that we paid to have them do that. They can create a market for you. So they assess. And when we talked to them the first time, they said, hey, you're not ready. Give it 6-9 months, keep growing like you're growing, and then we'll take you to the market. But they really, they got us in front of people that never would have known about us. And I think really provided that market of people, of corporations that were looking to buy someone like us.
I think that Ad Media was a recommendation from Dave Williams and Dave and Brian from 360i.
Yeah, I think they actually recommended we look at both, them and Petsky.
Yeah.
We interviewed them both, and for whatever reason, we went with Ad Media.
Well, 5 years later, we went with Petsky.
That's right. Yeah.
Engage, use Petsky to sell. Yeah. But the other thing is, I also think like the ability for Raghu and I to go to most of the initial meetings to talk to potential acquirers, and to have you two back at the office running things, keeping things moving was huge. To your point earlier, Danny, like if it had been one partner, it would have been really hard to continue building the business while that happened. So that was invaluable. Okay, let's have some fun. Let's talk about some memories that we laugh about every time we think about them. Let's start with Raj's spelling, which was epic.
Which is awesome. I have perfect spelling, perfect grammar. Just let's move on.
Just move on.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so many good memories of it, but probably the best contextual one was Raj's bad spelling is actually because of some mistakes we actually made in copywriting for a different client that Raj wasn't involved in. And the client wrote back and said, hey, really, I need better quality on this. We've had an email or two go out with a couple of copy errors, and we need you to be more diligent, and we need your team to really, be on point on this. And Raj furiously wrote her back and said, I've talked to my team, we're, getting everything straight. I trust, you should trust that I'm going to take your business very sensuously. So it was good that Raj offered to be very hands-on with her business, but I'm not sure if it really put her at ease in that instance.
Man, my favorite memories of Raj's spelling weren't actually the spelling; they were Jeff's reaction to it. So, Jeff, to his credit, was very much a detail-oriented communicator when it came to dealing with our clients. Right, wanted us to say the right things the right way, and we all learned a lot about that. But boy, I remember being with Raj, like we'd be in a conference room working on something, and Jeff would come into the room and he'd be furious, and he'd write on the wall and he'd go, Raj, what's where, and where? This is how you use each one. Raj, this is there, and there. This is how you use each one. Like there was once a week, there was at least a drama where Jeff would come in and put an English lesson on the whiteboard for Raj. And boy, those were classic moments.
Rod used to blame it on being British, but I was like, Rod, they speak English over there too.
He invented it.
You just had to change all sorts of spelling.
I think the worst thing was when the capability came in Word where you could just have the squiggly line and just hit accept, and that's all he would do.
It got worse.
It got worse.
I'm sure that's how sensuously got in there.
It got worse. If you guys remember, I was probably still am a bit of a pecker typer, right? So I'm just like this, right? And then I go up and accept, get it out. Next thing.
Should we have Rod spell seriously on this call, or should we give him a pass?
I'll be wrong.
No,
yeah.
All right,
I'll be central. I'll be central to you.
Go badly. All right. What about our first official office? It was in the back of a Fitness International. Danny, you want to describe it and then describe the times we could not have clients in for meetings?
Sure. Actually, well, I'll tell one story before that and then talk about what an upgrade that was. But I remember, so our first unofficial office was in Jeff's basement. So his family house's basement, right? So we had 2 computers down there. And I'd come back from college and decided to live where I worked. So I ended up setting up a small room in his basement. This is an unfinished basement. We had our computers and our printer down there. And what was funny about it was, since it was a basement and it didn't have normal air circulation, I would wake up in the morning and I'd be covered in dust. And I always joked I'd get up and do this and dust would fly off my shirt. And then I'd go over to the computer and sit down and start working. And that was my shower in the morning. So, but then we were lucky enough to actually upgrade and get our first office, and that's what you're referring to, Jeff. And our first office was in the back of a fitness center, and what had happened is a fitness center had taken the back part of their space and carved out some office space to rent out. Well, what made it funny was that the walls that they had chosen happened to be mirrored walls because they were running some sort of class in there. So half of our office had mirrors. So when you're sitting at your desk, you looked up at yourself in the mirror, which was kind of funny. But what was even funnier was that they moved the class right next door that they were running. And so certain times of the day, the base would shake the tables and the walls in the office. So we had to start putting a special schedule together to make sure that we knew the schedule, so we didn't have anybody show up at the office while the class was going on, because you barely could have a conversation during the classes. So I just remember that as a classic thing we had to avoid, was scheduling meetings with clients, during a jazzercise class or whatever they're doing back then.
The brave client that would drive behind the back of the fitness center into this.
Yeah, that would meet us in the back.
Shady.
That's right. It was a shady entrance.
Well, guys, we got through a lot today. Our next episode, we're going to go into the engage years. That's what I expect us to tell the truth.
So does that mean, am I only going to be on for some of the talk then and then leave, just like the engage years?
Remind us how long, because the 3 of us stayed through the end of that.
I was on 2 years, 8 to 10. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're going to get into that. We're going to talk all about that. So, all right, boys, we'll talk to you next time.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Hey, guys.
Good job, guys.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.